All right, so this last section of this unit, unit 11, the last section, we're going to be starting with the dot product. Now, the dot product is basically the force that two vectors produce. Not too complicated, which is a good thing. The thing we're going to be doing to find the dot product, I'm going to multiply the first values. So let me multiply -7 times 1. I'm also going to multiply the second values. So let me go 2 times 0. First values, the second values. So my multiplication, -7 plus 1, I know is a -7. 2 times 0 is 0. And then I'm going to add the results. -7 plus 0 will be -7. All right, let's take a look at question number 22 in our notes. Multiply the first values. So 5 times a -8. We go 5 times a -8. Let me take a look at the value, the second values. -1 times a -4. 5 times a -8 is -40. -1 times a -4 is +4. And like I said earlier, I add the two values. -40 plus 4 is -36. All right, hopefully you're seeing that it's not too complicated. Looking at question number 23. The first values, let me go -7 times a -6. And then -5 times 7. I know -7 times a -6 is +42. -5 times a +7 is a -35. I'm adding these two values, but we learned back in elementary, we learned sometime back that when we add numbers that have different signs, a positive and a negative, we subtract the values and keep the sign of the large number. So in this case, it's going to be +7. Taking a look at question number 24. Multiply the first value on each vector, -2 times a -5. And then multiply the second values, -1 times a -1. I know -2 times a -5 is 10, +10. -1 times a -1 is +1. And when I add these two values, 10 plus 1 will give me 11. So that the dot product, the force created by the two vectors, is that simple. Now, the cross product, so we got to be careful, dot product and cross product. Now, the cross product here, this is going to take us a little bit more work. I don't call the values on the dot product, on the vectors, I don't call them the X and the Y values. I call them the first and the second values because some vectors might have 3 values. As a matter of fact, let me write my values. So my first vector, the values that we're going to have is a -2, a +2, and a -3. The values of the second vector are -5, +9, and -9. I am going to write the 3 values of each vector. And in reality, the values that we call this, we don't call them X value, Y value. We're going to call them I, J, and K. The first value is I, the second value is J, and the third value is K. One thing I'm going to say about the cross product, my result will be a vector. My first term is going to be I, the second term is -J, and the third term is going to be K. Do notice that I am going to change the sign on J. I'll come back to this in a minute. Now, on the left, these things right here, let me make it into a matrix. Your Algebra 2 teacher was supposed to cover something about matrices. So this is what we call the matrix. And then we're going to do what we call the discriminant of each value. All right, so to find the I value, I'm going to cross out. I'm going to use a highlighter, even though it doesn't make it disappear. But I'm going to cross out the I column. And I'm going to cross out the row with the letters. I'm left off with only 4 numbers. For the discriminant of a matrix, let me cross multiply it. 2 times a negative 9. So it gives me a negative 18. And then negative 3 times 9, that gives me a negative 27. The only thing here is that in between them, I'm not going to put a plus sign like I did with the cross product. With a dot product. Instead, I put a minus sign. All right, now negative 18 minus a negative 27. I know 2 negative signs make a positive sign. Negative 18 plus 27, that makes it 9. And that's going to be my I value. Now let's figure how to find the J value. Again, I'm going to use a highlighter to cross things out. I'm going to cross out the row with the letters, and I'm going to cross out the column with the J. I'm going to find my discriminant. I'm going to cross multiply with the values that I see here. Negative 2 times a negative 9, that's 18, minus, there will always be a minus, and then negative 3 times a negative 5, that's 15. So I know 18 minus 15 is 3. So let me call this 3J for right now. Let me find my third discriminant, my third value. Let me cross out the row with the letters, and let me cross out the column with the K. And I'm going to cross multiply. Negative 2 times 9 is a negative 18, minus, there is always a minus, 2 times a negative 5, which for now, let me call it negative 10. I know 2 negative signs make a positive sign. Negative 18 plus 10 is negative 8K. This is my K value. Now, what I'm going to write as my answer here will be, there's my opening of my vector, and it's going to be 9, comma, negative 3, comma, negative 8. Close my vector. Couple things I want to emphasize. So let me do this. Going to emphasize couple things. The sign on the J, I change it from positive 3 to negative 3. That's the only one that I changed, because I had said earlier it was going to be negative J. So I'm going to change the sign of the J value, not the I, not the K. Another thing I want to emphasize here is after each comma, when you type it, don't forget an extra space after each comma. So there's a space after each comma. All right, let's take a look at question number 26. Let me write my matrix. The values of the first vector are negative 5, positive 5, and 2. The values of the second vector are 1, negative 4, 5. And I know my first row, it's the I value, the J value, and the K value. Let me make this into a matrix. So let me find the discriminants. For the I value, I have to cross out the I column, and I have to cross out the letters column. And then I'm going to cross multiply. 5 times 5 is 25, minus negative 4 times 2 is a negative 8. 25 minus a negative 8. Keep in mind that minus a negative becomes plus. 25 minus a negative 8 is positive 33. And that's my I value. Now for my J value, remember, cross out the letters, cross out the column with the J. So I'm going to cross multiply 5 times a negative 5. That gives me negative 25 minus 2 times 1. That gives me a 2. Negative 25 minus 2 is a negative 27. And that's my value for my J. That's my discriminant for the J. Now for my K value, let me cross out the row with the letters. Let me cross out the column with the K. I'm going to cross multiply. -5 times a -4 is 20 minus, because there's always a minus. 5 times 1 is 5. Now 20 minus 5 is 15. And that's my K value. Now for my answer here, remember, I'm going to use my I, my J, my K value. However, I'm going to change the sign of the J value. So my answer here will be, my vector will be 33, comma, don't forget a space after the comma, positive 27, comma, and then positive 15. Again, remember I changed the sign on the J value. All right, let's take a look at question number 27. Let me use the left for my matrix. My first vector is -2, 9, -8. My second vector is 7, -5, 7. And I know the first row is the I value, the second row is the J value, and my K. And let me write this as a matrix. Now for my I value, I have to cross out the letters and cross out the column with the I's. Let me cross multiply. So I get 63 minus 40. So remember, 9 times 7, that's what gave me the 63. -8 times -5, that's what gave me the 40. 63 minus 40 is 23. And that's my I value. Now for my J value, let me cross out my letters. Let me cross out my column with the J. And that gives me -14 minus -56. -14 minus a -56. I know that the two negative signs make it a positive sign. So -14 plus 56, they have different signs. I'm going to subtract, keep the sign of the large one. In this case, I get 42J. Now let me find the discriminant for the K. And I'm going to have 10 minus 63. And that gives me -53 for the K. Now my vector here is going to be 23, -42, and -53. Don't forget to change the sign on the J. I know here that I'm crossing things out using a highlighter. We can see what I cross out. In your case, you might have to use your fingers to block things or just mentally block them. So let's take a look at number 28. I know my I value, my J value, my K value. My first vector are forward, -9, 8, and then -2, -9, -3. Let me find my discriminant for my I value. So I'm going to cross multiply, so I get 27. And when I say cross multiplied, I meant -9 times -3. So 27 minus -9 times 8 gives me -72. We know that minus a negative basically is plus. So this gives me 99 for my I value. Using my matrix, let me find out my J discriminant. When I cross multiply, I have -12 minus -16. So this is basically 4. Let me find my third discriminant. When I cross multiply, I have -36 minus 18. I know -36 minus 18 is -54. And that's my K value. So my answer, my cross product will be 99, -4. Don't forget to change the sign on the J. -4, and then -54. Let me zoom out. This is the new stuff. Dot product, cross product. Take a picture of it. I zoomed out so you can take a picture. Now, a little quick thing on the homework. You could say, well, there's 20 questions, so 10 of each, that'll be fine. However, it is not quite like that. You will have these questions, mainly these questions, but considering that we have a test this Friday, I'm going to include questions that we covered in the first few weeks of this unit. So I'm going to have questions from the whole unit. So there's a reminder how the unit looks like. I'm going to have questions of all of these, and obviously questions from the end. So your homework for this week will also include the first 2 weeks of this unit. Okay. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me.